Hello everyone, Riley here, and I've seen Black Panther about 1.5 times by now. So a quick story, when I went to see it on Thursday night, I was really pumped, but I was after a long day of rehearsal and I had gotten very little sleep the night before studying for physics. So when I had gotten there, during the trailers, I fell asleep and woke up about halfway through during a reveal. So I had the entire movie spoiled for me and didn't have any of the emotional impact or any of the weight to the movie. I didn't feel any of it because I didn't see the beginning of it. So I ended up seeing it very early on the Friday and really liked the movie. But disappointing that I had to miss it out the first time. Like most people, I really like this movie. But however, I don't feel like it's truly as revolutionary or as defiant of the genre's tropes as a lot of people say it is. These past couple of years, I've been feeling a decent amount of superhero fatigue. I felt like most of the superhero movies that have come out have either been poor or mediocre. So I honestly have not been truly that excited about a superhero movie in a while, and I didn't let my expectations get too high for Black Panther, even though they were fairly high because of Ryan Coogler. And while I was not disappointed at all, I still feel like all of the issues I have with this movie are the same issues that I have with the genre as a whole. So this film is not going to actually break any of the superhero fatigue I am feeling. First of all, the premise. The premise is something we've seen hundreds and hundreds of times before. Even though Coogler and company do a lot of cool things with the story, outside of the initial premise is still kind of formulaic. It is about a person who has either really cool tech or really cool powers that during circumstances either loses them or their opponent gets the same powers so that they're on the equal playing field. And then they end up having to use their intelligence and dig deep to defeat the villain and save the people they love. Wow, so original. I mean, I can't say I've seen this before. Also, Marvel, you spend hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars on your films, yet they are mostly technically incompetent. Are you kidding me? The lighting in every single Marvel movie is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And this film is no exception. The opening action scene when they're actually utilizing the lighting and trying to do cool things with them with the actual gunshots, it still looks terrible and it looks very jumpy. And that's another issue they have with their action in general. Over-reliance on quick jump cuts, and you can never actually tell what's happening. And it's very distracting and very off-putting to the eyes, and they have never, I don't feel like in any Marvel movie, the action has ever been a highlight. Also, the music. A lot of people are praising the soundtrack and the score for this movie, and while it's not as bad as most Marvel movie scores and soundtracks have been, it's not very good either. And while there are some cool things they do at times, and it does give it a decent mood, you could have achieved that mood while using just better music in general, and not over-reliance on 15 seconds of just a random song that feels kind of out of place. And also, Marvel, please take a page out of DC's book and use leitmotifs for your characters. It really adds something to the team movies when you have the scores going alongside the characters meeting up for the first time, and it gives it a grand scope to it, rather than having just a separate score for each individual thing that have no through lines. Also, the logic of this movie, some of it is not very good. They don't really explain the basic powers of what vibranium can actually do, and they just cast it off as it's a metal, but it's more than that. So it can do a bunch of different things that are like magic, but they are calling it technology, but they never really explain how that technology actually works. And they just say, oh, this ancient metal thing that came to Earth. That's not an explanation. That's just lazy writing. I'm gonna get into slight spoilers of some of the villain's motivations later on into the film, but it's really not that mandatory, but I'll have a spoilers alert up there. So, even though his actual plan of what he wants to do in terms of Wakanda, in terms of taking over, that makes sense. And it's a very compelling storyline. Once he actually wants to implement his plan for the rest of the world, as in getting the minorities and the oppressed people to turn against the oppressors, there's never really any motivation for that in the film itself. While, yes, you can assume that a poor black child from Oakland has experienced a lot of racial issues in his life and has been oppressed in that way, they don't ever say it in the movie. And I don't feel like to make that point to a larger audience, you can make that assumption that they are all thinking that. I think just adding something to the very beginning of the movie, having just a quick 15-second shot of some older white kid just like saying a backhanded comment to him, could have completely changed the focus of it and made it seem like this kid, when he was left behind, had to deal with all of these racial issues that he would not have had to face in Wakanda, and that Wakanda could help him solve. So I feel like there could have been more explanation there. And while I am focusing on the negatives of this in this video, I still really like this movie. This movie has a lot going for it. All of its characters, for the most part, except for Daniel Kaluuya's character, he was kind of useless. But other than that, the characters were really well done. The world that they created, except that they didn't explain what vibranium did, it was a really cool world, and where it furthered the MCU as a whole left me more excited for the other films. And they do some cool story elements, and even though this was a very well made film, it is still held back by some of the tropes of the genre, which is kind of frustrating to me, because I feel like if this was done by another studio, or if this was done in another way that was not hindered by the MCU as a whole, it could have been a much better film. Try not to kill me in the comments section. I know I said some kind of controversial things, and if you disagree, that's totally fine. Just please be civil about it. Just please. Over the next 2 weeks, I should have my final picks and predictions for the actual Academy Awards coming out. So excited that it's almost here. And drop a comment or like or subscribe down below if you liked what you saw here. And once again, thanks for watching.